Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, September 23rd. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Big Ten football season is on track to kick off exactly 1 month from today, Friday, October 23rd. The Buckeyes are back out on the practice field today. Last night, we got a chance to talk to some of the players and coaches on the defensive side of the ball up at the start of fall camp. Tony Gerderman and I recorded an episode of Buckeye Weekly last night to recap what we learned there. You can search either Buckeye Weekly or Buckeye Scoop on your podcast app of choice to find that episode if you want to hear us talk about that. Today, we're talking about the other side of the ball. I'm joined by Alex Gleitman. Alex's weekly ADEC column this week looked at this year's Ohio State offense. And Alex, it's honestly not crazy to think that this could be shaping up to be one of the, if not the most explosive offenses in Ohio State program history.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Listen, they lost some talent from last year's roster. Obviously, two offensive linemen, J.K. Dobbins, K.J. Hill, Benjamin Victor, Austin Mack. So it's not like they're not reloading a little bit. But with Justin Fields back with a full year under his belt in this system, another offseason to develop under Ryan Day with Quincy Avery, I mean, that's enough to say you got to be excited about this offense. But you add Trey Sermon from Oklahoma to help in the running back room. I think he's going to be a huge addition. I hate to say it. I think the receiver group could end up being better than last year's group. I mean, you have a guy in K.J. Hill who's the all-time leading receptions, leader in Ohio State history, and you're going to get better. I mean, that's just crazy. Chris Olave, I think, will flourish as the number one option. I think Garrett Wilson will have a much larger role this year. He seems to be moving to the Z receiver spot. So I think there's going to be a lot of balls coming his way. And then, you have a nice pool of younger guys behind them, along with Jalen Harris, who I think will form a really deep and talented wide receiver group that's going to be very productive and really explosive. And so you couple that with Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers, Thayer Munford. I have a lot of confidence in Harry Miller, and we'll see what happens at right tackle. But I think the offensive line should be pretty good, and I think it's going to be another record-breaking type of season for the Ohio State offense, especially with Ryan Day calling the shots along with Kevin Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the offensive line there, and I think that, when you say the Ohio State offense is going to be pretty good this fall, everyone goes, well, yes, of course, they have Justin Fields. But to me, it's that offensive line that's where it all starts. You've got, left to right, you've got Munford, who's been a returning starter for a couple of years, Harry Miller, who, he isn't technically a returning starter, but you talk to anyone around the program or talk to them at any point in the last 18 months or so, and it's just like, oh yeah, that kid's going to be fine. That kid's going to be great immediately. You got Josh Myers, returning starter. You got Wyatt Davis, who's, All-American, very well could have been a first-round draft pick in the if he had gone out to the draft this year. And then at right tackle, maybe it's a former five-star prospect like Nick Petit-Frere. I mean, with that kind of line, if everyone stays healthy, you can do just about anything you want.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is, to your point, who's the right tackle? I think Nick Petit-Frere has shown flashes, and he's a former five-star. He has the physical tools. Did he develop in year 3 into the guy that everyone thought he could be? I think if the answer is yes, I mean, this offensive line might be the best in America. I think, Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers, and as long as Thayer Munford stays healthy, that's an incredible pairing. And then, or trio. And then, as you said, Harry Miller seems like a sure thing at this point. So I think they're going to be really good, especially in the run game. I think my second question was, last year I thought they had some leaks and some holes in pass protection. I thought there was times where, there was way too many sacks or way too many hurries on Justin Fields. Sometimes, his legs allowed him to get out of trouble and make some plays and extend the plays, which was great. I thought sometimes he held onto the ball a little bit, which maybe made the offensive line look bad. But I think, did they improve in pass protection year over year? And I think, did they and can they fill that right tackle spot, whether it's Nick Petit-Frere, DeJuan Jones, or it's someone like Paris Johnson potentially. I think if those two things are checked off, they could have the best offensive line in America.
Now, moving to running back, we've heard that Marcus Crowley may not be back to 100% yet following his knee injury last fall. That was something Ryan Day brought up last Thursday when we talked to him. I was told that Master Teague is good to go. Trey Sermon was the first player to lose his black stripe, which sure sounds like he's a guy who's not only healthy but also ready to be a big-time contributor this fall. What do you see out of the running back position? It seems like they've got a couple pretty solid options there.
Yeah, it's interesting because they don't have a the guy, I should say. I mean, even with Dobbins and Mike Weber, they kind of did a little combo deal, but it was still, it was Zeke, and then it was Weber, and then it was Dobbins. And now there's not necessarily one guy per se, but I think Trey Sermon is going to emerge as that guy. I think he's more than capable pass protector, which is always big in the Ohio State offense. He could catch passes, which is really big in the Ohio State offense, I think, especially this year. And he's got that experience playing big time college football at this level, at Oklahoma, playing in big time games. And I think he's a really talented player who Ohio State recruited the first time around. And I think he's going to emerge as the guy. I think Master Teague is also going to provide a nice 1-2 punch with him. Master works harder than anyone on the team. Ask anyone who works the hardest on the team, it's Master Teague. And I think you see how quickly he rebounded from that injury that might have kept guys out halfway through the season or, something along those lines. And he was able to make it. He would have been full go if the season started on time. And I think he's going to provide a nice 1-2 punch. He's gotten bigger, stronger, faster, more explosive. I think you want to see a little bit more of that wiggle from him. That maybe that elusiveness that he didn't really show last year, but he's a good blocker. I think he was a better blocker than J.K. Dobbins last year in pass protection. And I think he's going to do some good things. He had those oh crap moments, maybe in the Fiesta Bowl last year where the moment might have been a little bit too big for him, in that point in time. But I think that experience is going to help him this year. And then, as you said, who knows how Crowley's coming along. I think it's a little bit slow, but Steele Chambers, I think, is a really solid number 3 back. You obviously still have DeMario McCall, who could help out a little bit if needed. And then you also have Mayan Williams, who's a freshman, who's at least come in physically very prepared and ready and in great shape. We'll see what happens when the pads go on. But I like the running back room. I think some people are down on it and have it as a question mark. I have it as a really solid group that's going to produce for Ohio State this year.
Yeah, Mayan Williams was one of the guys who, when we got to watch the players walk in and out of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center earlier this summer before workouts one day. That's been about the extent of our in-person viewing this summer. But he was the one that was kind of all the freshmen, kind of that he looks like he's bigger than I expected. A little more maybe physically developed and ready to play than I think people expected. Moving to the wideouts, another spot where there's some pretty exciting, interesting freshmen who could make an impact there. I mean, I think the starters, you're looking at least the returning players of significant note: Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams. But I mean, there is a ton of crazy young talent behind them. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the first true freshman on offense to lose his black stripe, just after Trey Sermon, who's a grad transfer, so that kind of doesn't really count. Gerd and I have been pretty over the top with our praise of Jackson Smith-Njigba since we saw that first spring practice, and he just caught literally everything in the building. And if you have ever watched any of his high school highlights, you know what we're talking about. But then you've also got G. Scott, you got Julian Fleming. I mean, that is crazy depth. I mean, that would be a very impressive 6 wide receiver rotation like they like to run right there. And that doesn't even touch on some of the veterans who can contribute as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the top and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, honestly, anything after that is gravy to me. Those 2 guys, I think they might be the 2 best receivers in the Big Ten, especially if Rondale Moore and Rashad Bateman don't end up playing. But even with them playing, I mean, they might end up being the 2 best receivers in the Big Ten. We'll I know you'll give me a little tease for my Around the Oval tomorrow, or I guess today with Matt Miller from Bleacher Report. He has Chris Olave as a first rounder. And I think Garrett Wilson's a future first rounder as well. So to have 2 potential first round picks at receiver, you start there, that's great. I think after that, I think Jalen Harris is a guy who might surprise some people. I think he could be really productive. Have to see where he kind of fits in. Everyone's excited about the young guys, but I think Jalen Harris, as whatever he is, a 4th, 5th year guy at this point, a veteran who's kind of paid his dues. Maybe this is the year he could be really productive. And then, I think Jameson Williams is the type of guy. He's almost, to me, maybe a more skilled receiver I don't want to say he's a more skilled Devin Smith. That's hard to say, but I think he brings a lot of those same elements while maybe being a better pass catcher earlier in his career and route runner earlier in his career than Devin was. I think he can blow the top off of defense. He's got crazy speed, the same way Ted Ginn did years ago as well. And so I think that's a different element. And then you mentioned the younger guys, G. Scott, JSN, Julian Fleming. Not sure Mookie Cooper, this is his year to be the guy. He could get a little bit of burn, but I think those three other guys are going to see a lot of action, and I think they're going to be really productive for Ohio State to go along with a tight end group that I think is pretty solid as well.
Yeah, we did save tight ends for last. That is sort of the tradition in the Ohio State offense is, oh yeah, also the tight ends. So they got Luke Farrell, they got Jeremy Ruckert back there. Those are two very big, proven receiving targets who've been pretty solid playmakers from there. You get Jake Hausman back as well, big kind of blocking back, big blocking tight end there. Those are three. I mean, that's impressive veteran depth there. I think tight end may be a concern in 2021, but 2020, that seems like a position where they are real well stocked to have a good year.
Yeah, I think, Luke Farrell's what he is what you've come to expect from an Ohio State tight end. Strong blocker. He's not going to really make a lot of mistakes. He's going to catch the passes that come his way. He'll get a few touchdowns a year, maybe if he's lucky, somewhere in the 20 to 30 catch range, right? I mean, I think he's just exactly what a Jeff Hireman, a Nick Bennett type of player, that a Marcus Baugh that you've grown used to seeing. I think Jake Hausman alongside him is going to be a really solid second tight end that you could put in there to be able to block in 2 or 3 tight end sets. But I think the guy who could be different and could potentially change things is Jeremy Ruckert. And if they don't use the tight end this year in the passing game with Jeremy Ruckert, I am convinced it's never, ever, ever going to happen. I watched this kid as a high school recruit out on Long Island. He is, I don't want to say he could be like Gronk Jr. or something like that, but he is that type of receiver that you see in today's game where you could split him out wide, create the mismatch on a smaller safety, be faster than a slower linebacker. He could be a matchup nightmare. And with, I don't want to say question marks, but with a lot of inexperience behind the main 2 wide receivers, if they don't find a way to get Jeremy Ruckert involved in the passing game, it's never going to happen at Ohio State. This guy is so talented. I think if they use him right, he's a guy who could potentially leave after this year, go to the NFL, have a really long, successful career. He could end up doing that anyway. But I think he could have that type of year potentially if they use him and they make a concerted effort to get him more involved in the offense. So I think then after that, there's guys like Cade Stover and Joe Royer that are young and have to prove themselves and things like that. But those 3 guys are going to be a really solid group for Ohio State. They'll be good. Can they be great with production from Jeremy Ruckert? That's something I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest challenge for Jeremy Ruckert may be, okay, there's like 7 other guys on offense they also want to get the football to, and just finding enough touches for him, because I mean, we've seen what he can do in the limited opportunities had. You go back to the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin where he had that like one-handed catch in the end zone. I mean, that's something we've seen him do in practice a bunch. That was not just this is the only time in his life he's done that. Like, no, he does that all the time. He's got insane hands, and yeah, if he gets the opportunity, he could put up, whatever would count as crazy numbers for an Ohio State tight end. I don't know, 350 yards and 5 touchdowns. That would be probably close to record breaking for an Ohio State tight end over the last 10 years or so. But yeah, he is definitely one to watch as well. What's interesting to me is you've brought up a couple, like right tackle, backup quarterback could be a concern, but you go back through the rest of the Big Ten and there's so many contending teams that have where their question marks on offense are, Penn State has had almost total turnover of its offensive coaching staff, pretty much starting from scratch at receiver. Michigan replacing 4 offensive linemen at quarterback, receivers. I mean, when you take that all into consideration, these are Ohio State's top contenders to win the East. I mean, I guess the starting right tackle and backup quarterback, like what are the other concerns at Ohio State, and how significant are those compared to what other teams are facing this year?
I can't see there being other concerns. I mean, to me is the stud have the O-line group. It's a new, you do have 2 out of 5 new offensive linemen. How do they gel? How does that group gel? I think that's really important. Again, I think they're going to be fine in the run game. I think how are they in pass pro? What does the right tackle look like? I think those are big question marks. I think backup quarterback, God forbid anything ever happens to Justin Fields, that's a huge question mark. Other than that, I think teams, Rutgers trying to figure out who's even playing on their offensive line. Michigan, I don't know who's opting back in and whatever. They have a lot of holes that they have to fill. I think there's certain teams that had more preparation than others with everything going on and COVID and things like that. And those are like massive question marks. And so you have to look at Ohio State and be thrilled at what the question marks are. Every year there's going to be guys that need replacing or new coaches or things like that. And to have basically just be minimized down to me, backup quarterback and maybe right tackle, I think that's, you can't ask for anything more.
Well, we mentioned this earlier. Alex also hosts the Around the Oval podcast, where he interviews recruits, other interesting people around the Ohio State football program and college football kind of world in general. Alex, let our listeners know who you have coming up on the show this week.
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier. I got Matt Miller, who's NFL draft expert, specialist, whatever you want to call him, from Bleacher Report. I think Matt does great work. We had Dane Brugler on last week. Very similar role, who does it for The Athletic. I think those are two of the best in the business. And it was really great to hear his insight and kind of the differentiation between the two on how they feel about a lot of these Ohio State players, what their draft prospects are, what they need to do this coming season to be able to boost their stock or put themselves in the best position to be selected in some cases. And so that was recorded before I think Sean Wade decided to opt back in. So obviously, just an editor's note there. But I think it doesn't change the fact that it's going to be good for Sean Wade to come back and put some game film on. But that's a teaser. It's some really good content for Matt. I think he did a great job. Their jobs, those guys' jobs, it's just impossible to me. Like, how do you watch that much film? How do you keep track of all these guys? And the fact that like Dane's an Ohio guy, a Northeast Ohio guy, so I expect him to know a little bit more about Ohio State, but I guess Matt, knowing how big of an NFL factory Ohio State is, pays a little extra attention to those types of programs. And so his knowledge was great. I definitely recommend giving it a watch or a listen on any of our channels.
And you can find Around the Oval and all of our great podcasts by searching Buckeye Scoop on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. While you're there, you can also find the episode of Buckeye Weekly I talked about off the top of the show. Tony Gerderman and I dropped that last night. Talking about the Ohio State defensive backs. We got to talk to Kerry Combs and some of the players last night. So we'll have a kind of full rundown of everything we learned there. And that is just the first of what is going to be a series of multiple weekly interviews with players, coaches, lots of interesting stuff. That is all part of the countdown to the season, which is now, 1 month from today. The Big Ten season kicks off. That's pretty darn exciting. And guess what? That means this might be a great time to join BuckeyeScoop.com. Hey, our members section has lots of insight and analysis from our incredible team of insiders, plus our Ask the Insiders board, where we have had pretty much nonstop lively conversations about just about everything you can imagine. Politics free, though, in case that's something that appeals to you. And I would imagine that probably appeals to a lot of people these days. So that is all at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can sign up for a membership right there. Again, search for all of our podcasts. Just search Buckeye Scoop on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. You can subscribe. We have 11 different shows right now. If you are interested in something and Buckeye Scoop does not have a show, let us know. I mean, we might have a knitting podcast this time next week. Who knows? It's we have quite an array of shows. Find the one you like. Hit that subscribe button. Also leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps people find those shows as well. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.